The clock struck midnight, and the mansion was wrapped in the kind of silence money could buy, thick, still, and heavy. Outside, the city lights glittered like 1,000 broken promises, but inside, every corner of Adrian Vale's estate gleamed with sterile perfection. Adrian, his self-made millionaire known for his ruthless business instincts and colder heart, had just returned from another high-profile gala. He loosened his tie, his face weary but unreadable, when a faint rustling noise echoed from the kitchen. It wasn't the sound of servants he'd given them all the night off. It was something else. Curiosity sharpened his fatigue. He walked softly, his Italian shoes silent against the marble floor. As he neared the kitchen, the motion sensor lights blinked on, washing everything in a pale glow. And that's when he saw her, a tiny figure crouched near the bread counter. A little girl, no older than 8, barefoot and trembling, clutching a loaf of bread in her small hands. Her hair was tangled, her face smudged with dirt, and her clothes hung off her like they belonged to someone else. For a split second, neither moved. The girl froze, her wide eyes reflecting fear so raw it seemed to fill the room. Then she bolted toward the window. Adrian's reflexes kicked in. He reached her into strides and caught her wrist. She gasped, struggling, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please, sir, I didn't mean to. I was just hungry." Her voice cracked, trembling with desperation. Adrian stared at her, stunned. His first instinct was to call security, or the police. That's what anyone would expect a man like him to do. He was the kind of man who didn't believe in second chances. Life had taught him they were for fools. But as he looked at her, trembling in his grasp, something inside him hesitated. The fear in her eyes wasn't that of a thief caught red-handed. It was the kind of fear that came from being cornered by life itself. "Who sent you?" he asked, his tone low, almost cold. She shook her head violently. "No one. I saw the bread through the window. I haven't eaten in 2 days." Her voice broke, and she sank to her knees, clutching the loaf as if it were life itself. Adrian's chest tightened, though he couldn't explain why. For years, he'd been surrounded by luxury, by people who smiled when they wanted something, who lied to his face for profit. But here, in his immaculate kitchen, stood a child who had nothing to hide, only hunger. He knelt down, the marble cold beneath him. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, unsure if it was a trick. "Leela," she whispered. "Leela Brooks," Adrian sighed, rubbing his temples. "You know stealing is wrong, don't you?" he murmured. "Yes," she said, her chin quivering. "But being hungry feels worse." That single sentence hit him harder than he cared to admit. He glanced toward the untouched banquet leftovers from the gala. Enough food to feed 10 people. The contrast was jarring, decadence beside desperation. Adrian stood, conflicted, as Leela clutched the bread tighter, as if she expected him to take even that from her. For the first time in years, Adrian Vale didn't know what to do. His life had always been about decisions, quick, logical, profitable. But this wasn't business. This was something else. Something human. And as he stared at the trembling little girl in his $1 million kitchen, he realized that the decision he was about to make could change both of their lives forever. But before he could speak, a shadow moved behind the frosted glass door, a figure watching them from the darkness outside. Adrian's pulse quickened as he turned toward the frosted glass. A shadow moved again, slow, deliberate, then vanished into the night. He strode to the door and threw it open, scanning the grounds, but the long driveway stretched empty beneath the floodlights. Whoever it was had disappeared. The cold wind bit against his face, bringing with it the faint smell of rain and city smoke. When he turned back, Leela was still standing there, clutching the loaf of bread like it was the only thing keeping her alive. "Was someone with you?" Adrian demanded, his voice firm but not cruel. She shook her head quickly, No one. I just live out there. She pointed through the glass toward the trees lining the estate wall. In the old bus stop. I sleep there when it doesn't rain. Adrian blinked, as though trying to make sense of her words. You live in a bus stop? He repeated quietly. She nodded, her eyes full of shame. It's dry, sometimes, and people drop food near the bins. I don't steal much, only when I can't find anything. The way she said it like she was confessing a crime against the universe did something strange to him. Adrian Vale, the man who'd been called heartless in boardrooms, cold in headlines, felt an ache deep in his chest. He looked round his kitchen, shelves lined with imported ingredients, the fridge stocked with more food than she could eat in a year. And yet, right in front of him stood a child starving on his doorstep. He sighed and motioned toward the table. Sit, he said. Leela hesitated, eyes wide. It's okay, he added, softer this time. You won't be in trouble. She perched on the edge of a chair, watching him as though any sudden movement might send her running again. He poured her a glass of milk and placed a plate of warm rolls in front of her. For a long moment, she just stared, unsure if it was real. Then she began to eat slowly at first, then faster, tears streaking her face as she chewed. Adrian watched in silence. Something about the way she ate carefully, as if she feared it might vanish, reminded him of another time. A memory he'd buried long ago. A small apartment, flickering lights, and his mother crying softly as she tried to split one loaf of bread between them. He'd forgotten that hunger once had a taste, too. When she was done, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and whispered, "Thank you, sir." Adrian nodded, unable to find words. "Where are your parents, Leela?" he finally asked. Her expression changed. Her shoulders stiffened. "They're gone," she said after a pause. "My mom got sick last winter. My dad left before that. I was with foster people for a while, but they said I caused too much trouble." Her lips quivered. "So I ran." Adrian leaned back, staring at her small hands folded round the empty glass. The world outside his mansion had always been numbers, deals, statistics. He'd never thought about the children those statistics belonged to. He rose from his chair. "You can't stay in a bus stop anymore," he said. "It's not safe." Lila's eyes widened. "Are you sending me to the police?" she whispered. Adrian paused. The word police echoed in his mind like a test. The old Adrian, the businessman who solved problems with money or silence, might have said yes. But tonight, something in him resisted. "No," he said quietly. "Not tonight." Her shoulders eased slightly, though her eyes remained cautious. "Then what will you do with me?" she asked. Adrian didn't answer immediately. He didn't know yet. All he knew was that something about this moment, this girl, had stirred a piece of his heart he'd long believed dead. He turned toward the window again, where that mysterious shadow had been. The night was still now, but unease lingered. Someone had been watching them, and Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. He looked back at Lila and said, "You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." But outside, beyond the glowing windows of the mansion, a pair of eyes still watched from the trees, cold, calculating and waiting for dawn. Dawn came quietly, washing the vast estate in pale gold. The sky was streaked with the last whispers of night, and the morning air carried the scent of wet earth after a soft rain. Inside, the mansion was still except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the gentle ticking of the clock on the wall. Adrian stood by the window in his study, sipping coffee, his mind a storm of questions. He had barely slept, haunted by the image of that trembling little girl holding bread like it was treasure. Leela was still asleep upstairs on the couch in the guest room, wrapped in a blanket far too big for her. He'd gone up twice during the night, just to make sure she hadn't run away. Each time, he found her curled up, one small hand gripping the corner of the blanket as if afraid someone might take it from her. He set his cup down, glancing out toward the garden. The memory of the shadow by the glass door lingered. It wasn't imagination. Someone had been there, someone watching her or him. He frowned. Who would follow a starving child into his estate? A knock interrupted his thoughts. His housekeeper, Mrs. Delaney, entered, her eyes widening slightly when she noticed the extra dishes on the kitchen counter. "Sir," she said slowly, "were you entertaining someone last night?" Adrian hesitated. "Something like that," he muttered. "A child." She broke and stole some bread. Mrs. Delaney's face paled. "A thief?" "She's not a thief," he said quickly, almost defensively. "She's lost, hungry." The older woman studied him in surprise. She'd worked for Adrian Vale for years, seen his temper, his precision, his distance, but she had never seen him like this. "Where is she now?" "Sleeping." He glanced toward the staircase. "She said she lives on the streets." "I'm not sure what to do yet." Mrs. Delaney softened. "You did the right thing bringing her in. The city's no place for a girl that young." Adrian nodded absently, still looking out the window. "I'll find out where she came from. There has to be someone looking for her." But when Lila finally came down, rubbing her sleepy eyes, he realized the truth wasn't that simple. Her small frame was hidden beneath one of his oversized sweaters, sleeves dangling past her hands. "Good morning," she murmured shyly. I didn't mean to fall asleep." "It's fine," Adrian said. "You can stay for breakfast." She looked startled, almost afraid to accept kindness. When Mrs. Delaney set a plate of pancakes before her, Leela blinked at it as if unsure whether it was meant for her. Adrian gestured toward the food. "Eat. No one's taking it away." As she ate, he asked gently, "Leela, last night you said no one was with you. Are you sure?" Her fork froze midair. "Yes," she said quickly, eyes dropping to her plate. But her voice trembled. Adrian leaned forward. "There was someone outside, watching. Do you know who that might be?" She shook her head, but her knuckles went white round the fork. Then, softly, she whispered, "Maybe it was him." "Who?" Her eyes lifted, glistening. "The man from the Foster house. He said if I ever ran away again, he'd find me. He used to take the food they gave me and tell me I didn't deserve it." Her lip trembled. "Sometimes he hurt me when I asked for more." Mrs. Delaney gasped. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Did you tell anyone?" he asked. "They didn't believe me," she whispered. "They said I make up stories." Adrian's blood ran cold. For the first time in years, anger, not the business kind, but something deeper, raw, burned in his chest. "You're safe here," he said firmly. "No one's going to hurt you." But even as he spoke, a strange unease prickled the back of his neck. He turned again toward the wide glass door leading to the garden and froze, there pressed faintly against the morning mist on the glass, with the shape of HANDPRINT. Adrian stood frozen, his gaze locked on the faint outline of the handprint smeared against the glass door. The fingers were long, the mark too fresh to dismiss. The faint condensation round it was still wet. He stepped closer, every instinct sharpened. Someone had been there, watching. Close enough to touch the glass. Leah followed his eyes and gasped softly. "He found me," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her small hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. "He's here." Adrian turned to her, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Leela, listen to me. You're safe. No one is coming inside without my permission." Mrs. Delaney, pale and uneasy, picked up the phone. "I'm calling security," she said, her voice shaking. But Adrian lifted a hand. "No, not yet." He crouched to meet Lila's eyes. "Tell me everything you remember about him. His name, what he looks like, Her lips quivered as she spoke. Mr. Carr. He was my foster guardian. He ran a small house on the east side. At first, he was nice, he smiled a lot. But when no one was round, he'd lock me in the cellar if I didn't do what he said. Sometimes, he'd make me clean until morning, and if I fell asleep, he'd... She stopped, unable to continue. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Adrian's fists clenched at his sides. And no one believed you. She shook her head. He told them I lied, that I was trouble. Adrian rose slowly, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. He'd built an empire by seeing through lies, by reading people. And right now, he believed every word that came from her trembling lips. He called his head of security, Marcus, and ordered him to review the overnight footage immediately. Minutes later, Marcus entered, a tall, quiet man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. He brought in a tablet, already scrolling through camera feeds. "Sir," he said, "there was movement on the eastern perimeter around midnight. Look here." The footage showed a shadow slipping through the trees, a man in a hooded jacket. He lingered near the windows, his face occasionally catching the light. It was enough to make Lila flinch. "That's him," she breathed. "Mr. Carr." Adrian's expression darkened. "Did he try to get in?" Marcus shook his head. "No, just watched." For nearly 20 minutes, the room fell into tense silence. Lila stared down, hugging her knees. "He said he'd never stop looking for me," she whispered. Adrian looked at her, something hard and protective forming in his chest. This wasn't just a child who'd lost her way, this was a child who'd been abandoned, mistreated, and hunted. And somehow, she had ended up in his kitchen. That couldn't be coincidence. He turned to Marcus. "Double the guards at every entry point. If anyone approaches, I want to know immediately." Marcus nodded and left. Lila's small voice broke the silence. "Are you mad at me?" Adrian looked at her, startled. "Why would I be mad?" She hesitated. "Because I brought trouble. People always get mad when trouble follows me." He knelt down again, his tone softer now. "Lila, trouble didn't follow you. It found you because no one protected you. That ends now." Her eyes widened slightly, disbelief flickering in them, as if she couldn't quite trust what she'd heard. "You mean I can stay?" Adrian hesitated only a second before nodding. "For now, yes. Until we figure this out." Double quotes. Mrs. Delaney smiled faintly through tears. "We'll take care of you, sweetheart." Lila sniffled, whispering, "Thank you," before resting her head on the table. Exhaustion overtaking fear. Within minutes, she was asleep again, her tiny frame finally still. Adrian stood watching her, arms crossed. The handprint on the glass glistened faintly in the morning light, a quiet reminder that their peace was fragile. He turned away, his voice low, almost to himself. "Whoever you are, Carr, you just made the worst mistake of your life." But as the day passed and the house settled back into an easy calm, none of them noticed the small, folded note slipped beneath the front gate, a note written in jagged letters that read, "She's mine. You can't keep her." The note lay on Adrian's desk like a threat carved in ink. Its letters were crude, written with the trembling fury of someone desperate and dangerous. "She's mine. You can't keep her." Adrian stared at it for a long time, his jaw tightening. He'd faced competitors who'd tried to ruin him, men who'd threatened his empire. But this felt personal. It wasn't a business war. It was a battle for a child's life. Marcus stood near the window, his expression grim. "Sir, we ran the security footage again. The man left this just before dawn. He knew where the cameras were, avoided them perfectly." Adrian's voice was low but controlled. "So he's been watching longer than we thought." "Most likely," Marcus said. "And he's not afraid to make himself known." Adrian picked up the note, staring at the smudged fingerprints round its edges. He'd seen enough manipulation to recognize obsession. Carl wasn't just after Leela to reclaim control, he wanted power. Fear, the twisted satisfaction of dominance. Adrian felt his chest tighten. He'd built his life on control. But for the first time in years, something mattered more than his reputation, more than his business. Protecting her did. Later that morning, Leela came down to the study, still wearing the oversized sweater that nearly reached her knees. She rubbed her eyes sleepily, her hair sticking out in soft tangles. When she saw the note in his hand, she froze. He found us again, didn't he? She whispered. Adrian's voice softened. Yes, but he won't touch you, Leela. I promise you that. She shook her head, tears brimming. You don't understand. He always finds me. I hide, and he always comes back. He said I belonged to him. Adrian knelt before her, meeting her frightened gaze. Listen to me, he said firmly. You don't belong to anyone. Not him. Not anyone who hurt you. You're your own person now. Leela blinked at him, silent for a long moment. Then her lips trembled. You sound like my mom, she whispered. The words hit him unexpectedly. Your mother. She nodded. She used to say that before she got sick. You're your own person, Leela. Never let anyone tell you who to be. She sniffled. I remember her voice sometimes when I'm scared. Last night, I heard her again. Adrian swallowed hard, emotions he didn't expect clawing their way to the surface. He had never been anyone's hero. He didn't know how to comfort a child who had lost everything. But the way Leela looked at him with a mixture of fear and fragile hope ignited something unfamiliar inside him. He stood and turned to Marcus. Find out everything about this man Carr. His record, his home, his finances, everything. If he has a history of abuse, I want proof. Marcus nodded. Understood. When he left, the mansion grew quiet again. Leela sat by the fireplace, staring at the flames, hugging her knees. Adrian watched her from the doorway, memories flickering like the fire before them, his own childhood. His mother's struggles, the cold nights when hunger was their only companion. He had built walls round himself to forget those days. But now, through this child, those walls were crumbling brick by brick. Hours passed. Afternoon light poured through the tall windows, gentle and golden. Mrs. Delaney brought Leela a cup of cocoa and a biscuit, but Leela barely touched it. He's watching, she murmured softly. I can feel it. Adrian sat across from her. If he's watching, then let him. Because this time, he's looking at someone who won't run. She looked up, confused. You? Yes, he said simply. Me? For a moment, something shifted in her expression. Trust. Small, tentative, but real. She nodded slightly and took a sip of her cocoa. That evening, as the sky dimmed into violet, Marcus returned. Sir, he said, placing a folder on the table. I found something. Carr was investigated twice by social services for neglect, but both cases were dropped. No evidence. He runs a private foster home that's not even fully licensed. And one more thing, he's in debt. A lot of it. Adrian frowned. Debt? Yes, to a man named Cole Barrett. A name you might recognize. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Of course, he did. Cole Barrett, a rival businessman. The kind who thrived in corruption and blackmail. A man Adrian had beaten in a corporate deal years ago. And suddenly, the picture sharpened. Carr wasn't just a monster, he was working for someone. Adrian exhaled slowly, his mind racing. So that's what this is, he muttered. Not just a runaway child. This is leverage. Marcus nodded grimly. They wanted to trap you, sir. Maybe use her story against you, make it look like you took her. Or worse, Adrian's jaw set in determination. Then they picked the wrong man to threaten. But as he looked toward the dim hallway where Lila sat curled up on the couch, something heavier settled in his chest. Protecting her wasn't about power anymore. It was about redemption, about the one good thing he might still be capable of doing in a world that had long since hardened him. And outside, under the streetlight beyond the gate, Carr stood watching again, smiling faintly as another black car pulled up behind him. He wasn't alone this time. The night fell heavy over the estate, darker than usual, thick with tension. Wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faint hum of engines idling beyond the gates. Inside, every light in the mansion glowed like a shield against the growing shadows. Adrian stood by the control screen in his study, scanning the camera feeds again and again. His jaw tight, his chest heavy with unease, Marcus entered quietly. "Sir," he said, "there's movement by the north fence to men this time. I've already sent the guards to check, but I don't like the pattern. They're testing our security." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Carr, most likely, and someone's funding him. They're too organized for a desperate foster worker." Adrian exhaled sharply. He turned his gaze to the grand staircase where Lila's small figure stood, clutching the banister, half hidden in shadow. She'd overheard. He could see the fear in her wide, glassy eyes. "He's really here again, isn't he?" She whispered, double quotes, "Yes," Adrian admitted. "But you're not alone this time." She took a hesitant step down. "What if he gets in?" "He always gets in." He walked to her, kneeling so they were eye level. "Lila, listen to me. This house is different. I built it to keep everything dangerous out. You're safe here." His voice was steady, firm, but the truth beneath it was more fragile than he'd ever admit. That night, Adrian refused to sleep. He sat by the fireplace, the glow of the flames flickering across his face, a pistol lying on the table beside him, not for violence, but for the sense of readiness it gave him. Marcus patrolled the grounds, while Mrs. Delaney watched over Lila upstairs. The mansion, usually a symbol of isolation, now felt like a fortress protecting something pure. But just after midnight, the first alarm blared. "Breach north perimeter." Marcus's voice crackled through the comms. Adrian was already on his feet before the sentence finished. The monitors showed figures moving fast through the trees, two men in dark jackets, faces obscured. One of them, Carr, was unmistakable. "Don't shoot unless necessary," Adrian ordered, his tone sharp. "I want them alive." He grabbed his coat and stepped into the cold night. The air was tense, electric, heavy with the threat of violence. Gravel crunched beneath his shoes as he strode across the lawn, the security lights flooding the area in pale white. "Carr," he shouted into the darkness. "It's over. You're not taking her." A voice answered from beyond the fence, coarse and mocking. "You think money and walls can stop me, Vale? That girl's mine. She's worth more than you think." Adrian frowned, every word dripping with menace. "Worth," he repeated. "She's a child, not a transaction." Carr laughed bitterly. "To you, maybe, but the man who wants her doesn't see it that way." Adrian's stomach turned. "Barrett," he said through gritted teeth. "Smart man." Carr sneered. "He says you owe him. He says this little girl, this orphan, is the key to making you pay." Adrian took a step closer, fury rising like a storm inside him. "You tell Barrett that I don't pay debts to men who trade in children." Carr's eyes glinted in the dark. "Then maybe I'll just take her myself." In an instant, movement, Carr lunged forward, cutting through the gate's broken section. Marcus shouted a warning. Adrian moved faster. The two collided near the driveway, fists, anger, and adrenaline tangling into a violent blur. Rain began to fall, cold and sharp. Carr swung, but Adrian blocked, slamming him back against the gate post. Years of pent-up rage found its outlet, not business rage, not pride, but something righteous. "You heard her," Adrian growled, and you think you'll walk away. Car spat blood, grinning wickedly. You think you're saving her. You're just painting a target on both your backs. Before Adrian could respond, headlights flared across the lawn to black SUVs roaring toward the gate. Car's men shouted, pulling him back as they jumped into the vehicles. Within seconds, the tires screeched, the cars vanishing into the dark road beyond the estate. Marcus ran to Adrian's side, breathing hard. You all right, sir? Adrian nodded, eyes still on the retreating lights. I'm fine, but this isn't over. They'll come back, and next time they won't just be after her. Inside, Leela stood at the window, tears streaking her cheeks as she watched the chaos unfold. She didn't understand everything, but she knew one thing. The man who'd once scared her most in the world had finally met someone who wasn't afraid of him, and that, for the first time, gave her hope. Still, as thunder rolled in the distance and Adrian stared into the night, one question haunted him: what did Barrett want with her? The storm passed with dawn, leaving the world washed and still. Sunlight broke through the clouds, glinting off the wet leaves and glass of the mansion. But inside, tension still hung in the air like smoke. Adrian hadn't slept. His shirt was torn, knuckles scraped, and his thoughts restless. He stood by the large window of his study, watching the world wake, knowing the battle wasn't just outside anymore, it was inside him, too. Leela stirred on the couch nearby, wrapped in the same blanket as the first night she came. When she saw him by the window, she sat up slowly, her voice small but certain. You fought him, she said. You didn't let him take me. Adrian turned, his eyes softening. He'll never take you, Leela. I promise. She hugged her knees, gazing into the morning light. No one ever promised me anything before. That sentence hit him harder than any blow Carr had landed. For a long time, he said nothing, just listened to the steady beat of rain dripping from the eaves outside. He thought about how his life had been built on contracts, signatures, and control. But this promise, this simple vow to a little girl, felt like the only thing that truly mattered. Marcus entered quietly, holding a folder. Sir, he said, it's over. Adrian frowned. Over. We tracked Carr's vehicle. It crashed 20 miles out. He's in custody alive, but badly hurt. Barrett's men were caught near the docks. Police found enough evidence to open an investigation into child trafficking under Barrett's shell company. Adrian exhaled deeply, the tension finally releasing from his shoulders. Good. Make sure they stay buried under every charge possible. Marcus nodded, leaving him alone with Leela again. She looked up at him, uncertain. So, I don't have to run anymore. Adrian knelt in front of her, his eyes steady. No, you don't. Not ever again. Her eyes filled, and she whispered, Then where do I go now? He hesitated. The logical answer would have been to contact child services, find her a new foster home, maybe even a better one. But the thought of her out there again, in another stranger's house, made something inside him twist painfully. He smiled faintly. That depends. Do you like pancakes every morning? She blinked, confused, then giggled through her tears. Yes, good, he said, ruffling her hair. Then maybe this place could use someone who likes pancakes. Her mouth opened slightly in surprise. You mean I can stay here with you if you want to? He said simply. Not because you owe me anything. Because you deserve a home. A real one. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with quiet steps, she crossed the space between them and wrapped her small arms round his waist. Adrian froze, caught off guard. The hug was soft, trembling, but full of trust. Slowly, he placed a hand on her back, returning the embrace. Something inside him cracked open, something he'd kept buried for decades. The loneliness that had ruled his mansion, his heart. His life, it began to fade. Hours later, when Mrs. Delaney brought breakfast, she found them at the kitchen table. Leela was laughing at Adrian's attempt to flip a pancake, which landed half folded on the stove. He pretended to frown. Perfect, a modern art piece. Leela giggled harder, her laughter filling the house like sunlight through a dusty window. It was the first time in years the mansion had felt alive. After breakfast, Adrian stepped outside, letting the crisp morning air fill his lungs. He looked toward the trees beyond the gate where this story had begun. There was no shadow there now, no threat, only quiet peace. He thought of how strange fate could be. One small actor child stealing bread had broken through the steel walls round his hard dot as he turned back toward the house. He saw Leela through the kitchen window, feeding crumbs to a bird perched on the sill. Her face glowed in the light, innocent, free. He smiled a real smile, the kind he hadn't known he was capable of. That night, before she went to bed, Leela whispered to him, "You saved me." He shook his head softly. "No, Leela, you saved me first." She tilted her head. "How?" Adrian looked at her, eyes glimmering in the dim light. "Because before you came, this house was just walls and silence. You gave it life again." Leela smiled sleepily and climbed into bed, holding the same blanket she'd arrived with. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing calm and steady. Adrian stood by the doorway for a long moment, then whispered into the quiet, "Rest easy, kid. You're home now." Outside, the rain had stopped. The stars came out bright, clear, and endless. Somewhere between loss and healing, two broken souls had found something they didn't know they were searching for: family. And all it took was a loaf of bread.